I think biotech and pharma have a massive communication problem. Like there's a reason people hate them on average. And I think it's just because they're terrible at explaining to the rest of the world what they do, whereas tech or other industries are very good at it. And I think it just comes down to the communication of it. How well do you make people understand how drugs work or how diseases work, et cetera? I thought it could be useful to give a real face and lens to how this side of the world works, that it's not some just big evil conspiracy that comes up with cures to cancer and then hides it.
Hello, Dink.
Dink? Okay.
Nice.
8 a.m. boba.
That's right. What does yours taste like?
It's okay, but Andressa, I think, did a pretty good job at making the boba because it is 8 a.m.
It is 8
boba
a.m.
place was actually
This is
open.
homemade.
This is homemade.
From scratch.
I know. I like the electric neon color of this one. And I didn't even realize
It's 'cause
until
of the
now that there's
electrolytes.
like bubbles in it. So I'm going to give one of these a try.
What is the neon one? Aside from pure radiation.
Pineapple mango?
Oh, that uranium consumption had gotten cool.
The boba are very weird. It's a popping bubble. But Andressa, this is excellent. Okay.
Weird is a compliment.
Correct. Okay, welcome to Boba Biotech pilot episode. Okay, Armand, for people that don't know you outside of LinkedIn, how would you introduce yourself?
I don't know. If I meet them, if I have to give like a minute, I would be like, born in California, I grew up in Iran and Dubai because my parents did the opposite of what everybody else did and moved away from here when I was 5. And then, did undergrad and grad school chemical engineering. During my chemie PhD, we accidentally discovered if you squish cells at high speeds, you can disrupt the membrane, put whatever you want in them. And so we started our first company, Squeeze, based on that. Initially, I didn't want to let go of the academic side, so I did a immunology postdoc as well.
I remember that.
Yes. At Harvard for about a year, probably like record short postdoc before jumping to the dark side. And then with Squeeze, we did that for 10 years. We raised about 300 million on the equity side, another 100 on from the Roche partnerships. We went public in 2020. It was all about engineering cells to go after this holy grail called cancer vaccines. And then 2 years after we were public, me and the board had a nice big fight because they really wanted to focus everything on the lead program, as one does in biotech when financing gets hard. I really wanted to open up the technology side. So we agreed to disagree. And then we got Portal going as the next gen version of what we used to do. And so now we have over 50 customers. We're about 23 people. We got a big grant from DARPA recently to make a point of care machine. And so we've been continuing on that journey.
Nice. Is this what it's like to be on the VC side across the table when you first meet?
Probably. I think that's normally what I would say.
Nice. Yeah.
Because that's usually the context in which I'm introducing. Well, no, even if we're like recruiting or partnering stuff, it's about that.
Tell us about your life outside of work. Since that seems to be
whatever life I have. I mean, probably the two things aside from playing with the kids, probably the two things I cling to is trying to play soccer still. And I love going out. So clubbing and EDM and stuff like that. That's about it. I otherwise just really only think about work.
Okay. Yeah. I am familiar with the clubbing and the soccer. Many soccer injuries, I recall.
I was like, you've never been to one of the games.
No.
You've just heard about the injuries.
Seen you before and after crutches, the games, correct. And on crutches. Okay. So going back to your early childhood, when was the first time you wanted to do something like science related? Like how set was that?
It was pretty ingrained early on. I don't know why. I just always I especially liked math. But in my derivative, I kind of liked science stuff. So I think I always just liked it. And my dad was big on really promoting us going to a good university ever since I was little. So I would go to bed at night being like, all right, I want to get as many PhDs as possible. not knowing what any of that involved. But I just knew I liked science stuff. And so when I eventually got into university, I was like, all right, clearly we're going to do something technical. It was just a question of which thing. Any humanities stuff was way out of the question.
Did you have a dream college?
Yeah, Stanford, which is where I ended up going.
Why was that your dream college?
Because my dad had instilled it in us. He's like, you guys, Stanford and Berkeley, top 20. He had gone to Berkeley.
Oh, I see.
So yes, that's all that was ingrained in me.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I only really applied to the UCs and Stanford. I didn't even apply out of state just because for financial aid stuff, out of state wasn't going to be a good option. And MIT seemed too nerdy to me. So the hell if I was applying there.
That's rude. The shots
but
fired.
true. But true.
So did you ever think that you would, or at what point did you think that you would become a founder? Like, was that something that you thought about ever growing up or like right before Squeeze?
No, I never had like a strong disposition for or against it. It was just kind of neutral. I had been exposed to it as a kid because when we had moved to Iran, my dad had started a company there. So I was around it, but it was never romanticized to me. Unlike getting into a good university was, but like that stuff was never romanticized. So to me, it was just like a means to an end because my goal was always the cliche, make the world a better place. And one thing that had forced me to think about this was when I was starting to apply to grad school, I was doing it because like in science, there seems like there's this glass ceiling unless you have a PhD. I think PhDs are overrated, but there's a glass ceiling unless you have one.
Do you think that's still the case now? I mean, that definitely was the case.
The glass ceiling, I still think it's true. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. I still think it's true. I think it's been reduced, but it's definitely still there. It's like frat hazing. It's like the people that have it feel like they want to make you go through it too, even though they hated going through it and it was like not worth it. So it has its utilities, but I think it's overrated. Anyway, during that process, funnily, there was a question on the app of like, why do you want a PhD? I'm like, that's an interesting question. Why do I want one? And then it made me go down this mental path of like, well, I want to make a difference in the world. And I think if you make a difference through science, it's irreversible. Meaning that like, if you invent an airplane or cure a disease, the world will always be better. People will always fly. That disease will always be gone. Whereas let's say you do something to, I don't know, drastically improve education in a country. The next asshole can just come in and blow it up and it'll be as if it never happened.
Yeah, we see that.
And so with science, because it's irreversible, that's what I liked. I'm like, okay, no one can ever take it back. So I think that's what I wrote about.
That's a pretty deep cut for like an 18-year-old.
Well, this was for
for
grad
PhD.
School.
Okay, a young 20-year-old.
Yeah, for a 20-year-old. So I was like, yeah, that is why I want to do this. And ironically, what had extra convinced me of staying down the science and technology path was not a science class, but when I was taking econ, because in the economics class, when they're teaching you all the supply and demand stuff, like everything tends to be a zero-sum game. Usually it's like, oh, if X group is making more money, it's at the expense of Y group making less. The only two things that were just fundamentally good were like trade and specialization, but also technology. Because suddenly like things could just be more plentiful and cheaper and everyone can have them. And I was like, great, it's like fundamentally good. So it reinforced my weird view of things. So yes, that's why I went down.
I see. So it sounds like you weren't necessarily planning on being a founder the first time even. So when you were a founder the first time, did you ever think that you would do it a second time at that point?
Oh yeah, I deviated from the why the founder thing. No, and so to complete that first part, to get the second part, because of that mindset, to me, the science stuff was always a means to an end of making an improvement. I wasn't the type that like cared to understand how something works just for the hell of it. Whereas I feel like many scientists are like that. They're just fascinated by complicated problems and want to go down a rabbit hole. So the founder thing came up because I was realizing during PhD that, just because you helped make something or find something new doesn't mean it's now going to automatically go make a difference. Someone needs to go do that. And that second step is very non-trivial. And so that's what made me feel like, all right, we got to go start a company and go do this because otherwise no one else is going to pick it up and run with it. And so that's what made me become a founder the first time. And then you said the second time what?
Yeah. So at what point, like when you were doing it the first time, did you ever think that it would happen again? Like, did you ever think there's like a post squeeze? And
no, I was just like squeezed for life. I mean, on the one hand, I was like, this could very easily fail and die. And it kept not happening. But I wasn't even thinking past that. I'm just like, if that happens, when it happens, we'll just figure it out then. There's no point thinking about it now. Great. Like, what am I really going to do about it if I think about it now? So I was just all in, let's go do it. I will say it was one of those things where it's like so painful and there's so many things you got to do that I didn't think I would ever do it again. Like if you had abstract for Squeeze was 10 years for the last 8 years of it. If you abstractly asked me like, oh, if Squeeze disappeared tomorrow, what would you do? I would not say go start something else. I'm like, it's way too painful. I'm not doing this again. Even though it was going well. Yeah. Just like, it's just too much.
I see. But you obviously changed your mind. But before we dive into that a little bit more, I actually think that I've seen you like talk about how you decided to go the non-traditional, non-academic route and go into industry. And I want you to talk about more some of your advisors and how they like had maybe given you input.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you've spoken to about
as far as going into industry. Yeah. So I guess their role was prominent in me going to grad school in the first place because my undergrad advisors, I was initially going to go into industry. And then my undergrad advisors kept being like, no, don't waste your time. Go to PhD because you like the science stuff and you kind of need it if you're going to go. And luckily during undergrad, they had these really useful sessions where they would bring in alumni to talk about their career paths. And from their talks, it was very clear. If you wanted to advance in like science leadership stuff, you kind of had to have a PhD. There was no choice. If you were going to go to finance or something else, you didn't need it. So anyway, that's what made me go to a PhD. And I was one of those people coming into PhD wanting to get out as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And go to industry, which is the opposite of most people going into PhD. Most of them go in wanting to become professors. I was not that. And then funnily, a few years in, I flipped. To being like, oh, you know what? Like, I kind of like this stuff. Maybe I will be a professor. Just when all my classmates were flipping the other way, where they're like, screw this. I hate science.
And industry
now.
To you at that point meant like drug development, like big pharma, or just like anything?
Anything. I mean, by the time I was midway through PhD, I had gone down the bioengineering, biotech side more. But during undergrad, I was doing organic electronics and flexible displays. Nothing to do with biology. And so anyway, I had become attached to the professor route all through the lens of if we can create cool new things and that can help people. And then we, the academic types, help come up with it. And then someone else will go translate it. That was my mindset. When I was realizing that it's not trivial to do that because we had developed the Squeeze stuff, we thought it was interesting, but it seemed non-trivial to get it out there. I started debating jumping. And so my two professors, Klaus Jensen and Bob Langer, were the two I was bugging about whether or not I should do this.
Did they originally plant the seed in your head, or had you come to that conclusion on your own?
No, they didn't really plant the seed. No, I mean, everyone in Bob's lab tends to try to do spin-outs, but actually Bob himself doesn't necessarily encourage it, which I think is a good thing. Yeah, they hadn't really planted the seed. It was just kind of building up inside me to do it. And I had been taking some of the MBA classes just because you have to take some minor for the Chemie PhD. And I didn't want to take more science classes. So I took that. Anyway, the seeds were of my own doing. And then I was asking them about whether or not to jump. And I got interesting advice. Like Klaus was like, yeah, just, we should just clone you. And then one of you should go do that. And one of you should stay in the lab. And you could probably just run but in the end, you could probably just run the company as well as be lab oriented. And then Bob had interesting advice because even though his lab had spun out a lot of companies, he had never jumped. And I found that interesting. I was like, why didn't you ever jump? And his logic was basically that, well, he values the mentoring of the students and having more technology stuff spin out more than he does jumping into any one of those concepts. And his point was that if you think this is the greatest thing you'll ever do, you should jump. If you don't think it's the greatest thing you'll ever do, don't jump and come up with other stuff. And I'd also asked him, were there project companies that failed that you feel like if you were there, that wouldn't have happened? He's like, oh, for sure. And so I was like, all right, yeah, I do think this is the coolest thing we'll ever do. So yes, I will jump. And even though my mindset was very 50-50 at the time, in retrospect, I'm like, damn, I'm glad I did. But at the time, it was very knife's edge to do it.
Interesting. I didn't realize it was such a debate because I was just there. And it was just like slowly happening and progressing over time. So that's really, it's actually.
I think it may have been way more obvious to the people around me than it was to me. Because I think people like Klaus, who knew me, because he dealt with me more than Bob did, but like who knew me best, I think in his head there was no question. I'm going to go do this and I should do it. But to me, it was still very 50-50. I think it's because I didn't have their perspective of like, what does it take to do this versus not? And so for him, he was more convinced, whereas I didn't know how to weight what we're good at, what we're not good at.
Very cool. So then thinking back to those like maybe early days or early first few years of Squeeze, when did you think like, oh, like this as in being the technology or the company like might actually work? And when were you like, oh crap, we're like really in trouble?
You mean the company would be in trouble?
Or like you as your founder journey. So like it could be like, I guess it would be the company at that point.
I think I was always living a high intensity version of both things simultaneously, which is part of what makes it so tiring. In the sense that on the one hand, you see all these opportunities and cool things you can do. And that's exciting because it's like, oh, it looks like we can open up new applications and all that. Like this could be really exciting. On the other hand, there's plenty of resistance in the field in the sense that they're not doing what you do, or others may have done a version of these concepts in the past and it failed. So what makes you think that it's going to succeed? So there's a lot of reasons to doubt. And as science goes, like whatever, 90% plus of your experiments fail. So every time you're doing things down a path that others have died on and your experiment fails too, like, shoot, are we wasting our time? Like, is this actually not going to work? And we're delusional. And so you just got to cling to those moments where clearly important new stuff does happen and use that to bear through when you're going through these phases where stuff doesn't. So I don't know that. I mean, those things were accentuated by certain moments where we almost died, which we can get into, or had glory. But at every moment, there was that underlying tension.
I see. And what you just said right now speaks more, I think, to moments of scientific insight and clarity. But then tell us more also about like the business side of like moments where like either we're very triumphant or...
So for what we were doing, we started as a tool company because the technology could do a lot of things and a lot of people were interested in what we could do. So I think the initial very, very early triumphs were just getting a lot of people to adopt it. So within MIT, within Harvard, and some prominent other companies that we were talking to, like they were trying it out and seeing some success. So that was like an initial triumph. I think the biggest one in the early days would have been getting our first Roche deal, because at the time we were like rinky-dink spin out.
And was this before or post fundraise? Like what stage of fundraising?
Those two were very linked together. So we had raised angel money. So we had about $1 million in angel money that we were operating off of. And then what we wanted to do in cell therapy, because like with Squeeze, you could engineer cells in ways that weren't possible. And there were new things that we could enable in cell therapy. The angles we were pushing were one related to cancer vaccines, where a lot of people had failed in the past. So it wasn't the most popular thing to do. And Roche got really interested in what we were doing. And that was a big deal to us because we were this like rinky-dink bootstrapped thing that had spun out of MIT, run by a grad student, which is like the opposite of what most biotech VC invested things are. It's usually some like 50-year-old in a suit that they've inserted there to bring some adults guidance. They don't let the children run with the science. And so Roche had gotten really interested, which was important to us. And then the VCs knew Roche was interested. And so it culminated in like one of the VCs, Polaris, decided they would lead our Series A for $5 million, knowing very well that the Roche discussions were progressing. And then a few months later, we closed the Roche deal, which was it was a $500 million deal, $12 million up front. The rest would come later. But that was a big moment for us because it was something like Roche, the giant, well-respected conservative adult, has decided these children are onto something. And so suddenly all these like VCs or other partners that had ignored us were suddenly had whiplash because they're suddenly like, whoa, the kids with their cartoons, like Roche cares? Like, what's going on here? So many people that wouldn't answer our call or our emails were saying like, hi, bestie, how are you doing today? Sorry, I missed your 5 emails.
Oh, they just went to spam the first 5 times.
Yeah, I didn't know you were cool. What?
That's great. Oh my gosh.
That was one of the first
that
was one of the first huge moments. Yeah.
Summarizing now, or transitioning a bit to more the leadership side, tell us about something about people in biotech that outsiders might not expect.
People in biotech that outsiders might expect. Ooh. Which kind of people? Like the scientists?
It's up to you to decide the user persona.
I think relative to like the general world, people think pharma and biotech is way more evil than it is. Because I think I come from a family of all non-technical people. Like, I think the perception of pharma and biotech is way more negative than it deserves to be, because I think 90% plus of who's involved in this industry, like, truly just wants to make people better and all those things. I mean, I agree there's weird incentives with pricing and how the business works, but in general, I think they get way too negative a rap. And I think they misunderstand how confusing and uncertain all the science and stuff is. Other things people don't realize. I think the upper echelons can get very jaded.
And do you just mean people that have been in the industry for a really long time?
In the industry for long periods of time, especially at higher levels.
Okay, yeah.
They can get very jaded because they see so much failure. Just because the trials are extremely likely to fail. And they'll also see, like, as with any industry, I guess, like, not nice people get rewarded versus them. And so I think they start becoming the things they hated. And I think that's unfortunate. So there can be too much of a cycle at the top. Let's say the C levels for public biotech or some of these more experienced C levels in VCs, where they become a little disconnected from actually caring about the stuff they do. And it's just like a job to them. And, the company failed them as long as I got a good paycheck out of it. Or there can be a huge perverse incentive in public companies to pretend like a trial worked just so the company can keep existing, as opposed to...
How long can someone do that for?
A very long time.
Oh, interesting.
Because these trials take so long.
Yeah.
So, for example, if someone had very middling phase 2 results and in their heart, they know this is really not likely worth it, they will still go out and say, oh, like, we think there's really something here. Like, look at this corner of the data. And by the way, we know way more data than we actually put out. So we're putting out the parts that, like, we had to, plus the part that we thought is arguably interesting. We should really get funded to go do a phase 3. That's 2-3 years or something, or maybe even more. So they have job security for the remainder of that. I mean, I'm being cynical, but I think sadly this does happen in a number of cases. And then it causes this mistrust with the investor side or public side too, where they're like, okay, did this thing actually, do you really think it's working and it's worth this? Or no, you're just saying that.
I see. And do you think that becomes like very apparent in like 2 to 3 years later then? That's what happened? Or is it just...
I think it's really hard to say because it's like, again, these things fail more often than they don't. So it's really hard to say, would you have truly known that? So I think it comes down to like what was in those people's heads, or the people that had maximum information. What did they truly think? And I would argue a lot of times they're more ambivalent about the outcome than they'll lead on, but their incentive is to just keep going.
So then I guess from your point of view, because you had the most potential information at your time doing trials at Squeeze, were there times where I guess you maybe even felt that same way because like the data comes in and like...
Well, that's part of why we had the big fight. It's because from the little bit we knew, because the board wanted to focus everything on a lead trial, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to open up the tech side more. Like from the little bit we already knew about that most advanced trial, I was getting very nervous. Even though ironically I was the one that had like convinced everyone it was a good idea to do it. I was kind of like, ooh, like something's off. Like we missed something.
Yeah.
I still think the concept in general could have totally worked, but like something about that implementation was wrong. And we had no idea what. And then that was just my sense. Like there wasn't enough full evidence to clearly declare it, but I was like, something's off.
Gotta trust your intuition.
Something's not right. And yeah, that's why I wouldn't have bet the farm on it. Because like the mission for 10 years had been like make a cancer vaccine work. And this was like our latest and greatest version of trying that. And I was like, something's off.
I see.
In contrast to, we had this other trial, which was using a different mechanism with red blood cells, which we didn't know any data yet, but I thought that was a shot still worth taking. And very ironically, that one is the one that ended up with the most interesting data because it seemed like it gave a complete response to one of the patients who's still alive today and 2 cases of stable disease. So that one was actually ended up becoming super interesting. But yeah, the lead one, I had doubts.
I see. And then at the time when you had doubts on the lead one, did you have like enough data or any data from the red blood cell one to have a sense on that? Okay.
No, we didn't have any data.
Okay. Got it. Cool.
It was just, in my view, like a mechanistically distinct shot that would succeed and fail for reasons independent of the lead thing we had. So that's why I thought it was still worth doing, because it would succeed or fail for different reasons. And that's where, like, if I'm getting nervous about option A and option B is independent, I think we should keep option B.
That makes sense. Cool. Okay. Diversify the portfolio. What's a leadership lesson that you learned the hard way?
All of them.
I mean, you did learn through experience, so, you know.
Yeah, because I wouldn't really read any books or listen to people that well. It was just really a matter of running headfirst into the wall. I would kind of listen, but I would listen, but I wouldn't defer. I would hear what they were saying and why they were saying it.
I see your point, but
I see your point, but I'm still going to go left. I think one of the hard ones was how terrible things can happen with a collection of mildly well-intentioned moves by others. And what I mean is that people end up becoming too siloed, like in the sense that they just don't know everything else going on. They don't have context. They think they're doing something good. They're making decisions based on what they know and understand and are good at, whereas someone else might have a completely different view of what to do there. And so there's all kinds of like political chaos that can happen because the CFO thinks one direction, the CSO thinks a different direction, the CEO thinks a third direction, and everyone's trying to like fight for what they think is right. And it's a mix of ego plus genuine good intention that plays in, and very often stagnation is the result, or you go for the option that no one actually thought was a good idea. It was just the least disagreeable option. So it made me eventually learn, and through a series of various little-ish things that went wrong or like took way too long to decide, it made me land on like, all right, for better and for worse, you got to figure out who's going to be the single decision maker on these topics, no matter how big or small, and just freaking let them go for it. And either they get it right or they don't. But this kind of like committee-based call very often results in just the least offensive option being chosen, which no one necessarily thought was a good idea. And when things go south in those committee-based things, no one takes responsibility.
Yeah, sure. It was a vote.
They all pretend like it was everybody else's fault.
So on that, like from that framework, how do you then decide when to step in if you've like named an owner of a decision, right? If you disagree with where things land?
If I've already named the owner, unless I think the decision is catastrophic, I'll stick to it.
Okay.
Because I think you needed to have decided that a priori, not after they've come up with what they want to do, unless they came up with something psychotic that you didn't even, it's like, I don't know, you told them to pick colors for a logo and instead they're like, hey, let's go do this illegal thing. I'm like, no. But yeah, so I think you just have to decide in advance which ones you're going to let them do. And I think whenever you're doing that, it's a balance of how capable are they of making the decision? Should this really be their domain to decide? Because sometimes you might be like, oh, I don't know if they're good at this, but they really should be the one deciding it. So I should let them do it. And if they keep screwing it up, then they should be gone.
Okay.
So sometimes I'm like, I don't actually think you're going to make the best call, but you should be capable of making it. So let's find out. So if it's big enough or multifunctional enough, I'll do it. But if it should be within someone's domain, that's where, or even if it's not in their domain, but it doesn't encroach on someone else's, but I think they're very capable of it, then I'll also let them do it just as a test kind of thing. Yeah, I know it sounds confusing, but
that's fine. We just want to learn, explore the mind of Armand.
Oh, God.
We're going to jump into a friendship segment where we learn more about Arwan as a person, I think. Okay. So we've known each other for a very long time. What's a fun story that you think listeners should know about us that sums up our friendship?
Yeah, the getting up to this reminded me of like it's been almost 20 years. I don't know why my head goes to this, but there was that phase where with all the undergrads, the desk next to us had been scared away and under the desk had turned into a nap zone.
That's right.
And so I don't know why, but one of the times I don't know why this is what pops into my head, but one of the times I walk in to do something and then you just crawl out from under there. And I'm like, what the fuck? What? I didn't even know you were, why are you down there today? And then you're like, oh, last night was rough. So I came and sat here. I'm like, oh my God. Don't do that.
It's possible that I was working my EMT shift and just came in.
Yeah, probably. And then which probably proceeded with a lecture of me being like, you're overstretched. Stop doing the EMT
Stop doing the EMT thing.
Yeah.
Just do more labs.
Yeah, you're just doing it because you're trying to be a pre-med nut job, but I don't think you'd make a good doctor.
Rude.
But true.
We don't know that.
We do know that.
And just for listeners, some context behind that story. I was an undergrad working for Armand. He was my first boss. And he had a bunch of undergrads, a whole army of them, which we fondly refer to ourselves as minions, perhaps. Not sure. Anyways, we did take over the desk next to him. And it turned into a nap zone.
Under the desk.
Under the desk.
On top of the desk was all work.
That's right. Okay. So what do you think we bond over more? Clubbing on Fridays or coming up with our cell cartoons? Cell stories plug, by the way.
I don't know. There are different types of bonding. Because clubbing, I think we're generally agreeing on where to go and what to do. Cell cartoons will fight over some ideas or
that is true.
Concepts. Yeah, you'll just aim for random cutesiness. And I'm like, no, that is not how that mechanism works. This is stupid.
Queen of cute. That's right. Okay. So then I guess what inspired you to launch this podcast?
I think a few things in addition, aside from people telling me I should do it.
You went right for one time. You went right for one.
Well, it's because I was kind of agreeing. I think biotech and pharma have a massive communication problem. There's a reason people hate them on average. And I think it's just because they're terrible at explaining to the rest of the world what they do. Whereas tech or other industries are very good at it. Because, you can grab your phone, you can get a feel for it. And whether it's Apple, Google, or whoever, their advertisements and their public personas are very positively perceived, even though all they really do is sell us toys and tools to do stuff. They're not saving anyone's life per se. Whereas biopharma is horrific at it. And I think it just comes down to the communication of it. How well do you make people understand how drugs work or how diseases work, et cetera. And we're surprisingly bad at it. So that's part of the reasons why I thought it could be useful to give a real face and lens to how this side of the world works, that it's not some just big evil conspiracy that comes up with cures to cancer and then hides it and then keeps selling you $200,000 drugs to make money. And in addition to that, more narrowly, I think within biopharma, you'd be surprised how little certain segments understand how other segments work. Like a scientist or someone in the science chain may have very little clue how like big pharma deals work or the finance side works, and vice versa. Like the finance people may have no clue how some of the science stuff works, even though they've been around it for 10, 15 years. And so hopefully just allowing for that crosstalk.
Nice.
And I think our industry is also one where the limited channels that do exist where people talk, it's way too filtered and vanilla. Like they're not actually saying what they think. Yeah. So it's more about like extricating the real views and opinions of what's going on.
Cool. So I know we're just like at the beginning of starting this podcast series, but kind of what's your vision for beyond this improved communication and visibility into this industry? What are like types of guests that we can expect, and what do you hope that listeners get out of it?
I'm really hoping to hit a broad spectrum, and even though I love science stuff, not fall into the trap of doing too much science stuff. So it's going to be a mix of investors, pharma folks, biotech folks, both on the technical and non-technical side. I also think it'll be interesting to throw in a few of the, I'll call it like peripheral service providers to our zone, like let's say the banker types or lawyer types, et cetera, because they also have visibility into a lot of certain dimensions of what goes on. And it's easy to forget about them or hate on them, but they also serve a critical function, just to kind of give a rounded sense for how does this world function that helps generate drugs that could help save people and hopefully draw more interest into it in the long run, such that we can have a much, healthier future.
Yay, cool. I can't wait to meet all these guests. Cool. Okay, so now we're going to do a rapid fire question round for the listeners here. Don't worry, it's fun. Favorite boba drink?
Black milk tea, brown sugar.
Okay, cool.
30% sweetness.
Yeah, that's
not
cool.
100%.
30% ice. Okay, early bird or night owl?
Ooh, probably early bird, but I can do both. If it's for clubbing, it's night owl. Actually, I probably do both.
Yeah. End at the club at 2 a.m., go wake up and run at 5 a.m., question marks? Yeah, we don't know.
That has happened.
Yeah. Your least scientific guilty pleasure?
Least scientific guilty pleasure?
Yeah, is it just clubbing?
I think the weirder guilty pleasure is, I don't know if it's guilty. I'll blast EDM in the morning when I'm driving over, like very loud, windows open. I think the other commuters hate me.
Oh my gosh. One word or sentence that describes the biotech field right now.
Depressed?
Oh no. If you could make up one rule that everyone in the world should follow, what would it be?
A rule that everyone in the world should follow? Hold on. I didn't actually read those questions earlier. Right, to make one rule that everyone in the world should follow. All right, this might be too utilitarian, but like, I don't know. They have to take at least 4 STEM classes in college. Is that too vanilla?
No, if that's truly your view, that's truly your view.
I think some people just really need some baseline of analytical thinking. Because without it, I'm just like, oh my God, how did you come to that conclusion?
Nice. And that wraps it up. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.